The form on your website is most likely one of the first functional ways your prospective lead is going to interact with you. And the last step you need them to take in your lead generation process. You've done all of the hard work to get them to take the action. Now it's up to the form to finish the job. Is your website form set up and ready to handle the job? In this video, I'm going to go over how to create website forms that convert more leads. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Liquid Digital Marketing Podcast. In this episode, we are talking about website forms and making them convert more leads. Okay, so this one is going to be probably a fairly quick episode. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-ish items that I'm going to go through that you can implement on your website forms and make them convert better. So let's jump right into this one. The form title, the form should have a clear objective. So what you want to do with your form, above your form, is have a title. The title, what are they going to get? What do they need to do? Like, why are they filling out the form? What is the objective of them to fill out the form? And I know this may sound obvious, but a lot of times it's not. If you go looking at the forms, a lot of times you're not sure exactly what the objective here is of the form. So you can simply do this by just adding a title. So an example is one that I like to use and one that helps change the conversation of what you're asking them for, and it comes to like a free download. So instead of saying, the conversation is basically give us your email address and we'll give you in exchange your free download. So changing that conversation by adding the title, where should we send your free download? That way, it's like you're not trying to get their email address in exchange for the free download. You just need to know where to send the free download. So they need to tell you, like, they want it. Well, how can I give it to you? Where should we send your free download? Add that title above your forms, and that is a secret little tip that we use with our forms and our clients, and we have seen good results with that. Okay, the next item is to only ask for the information you need at that time. So think of the form, think of the person filling out the form and where they're at with you in their journey with you. If they are, let's say, your doctor's office and they're a new patient and you need all of this information, then yeah, you have to have them fill it out. And there's that expectation that you would need that, and that makes sense. If, they're just calling you to maybe set up an appointment or learn more, then they don't need all of that like new patient information, right? Like, you just need to know their name, maybe their phone number and email address, right? The bare minimum. Maybe there's some selection, maybe there's a message field, whatever. You only want to ask for what you think you need to know at that time. The more you ask, the more likely people will not fill it out. If it's a free download, you should have first name and email address. Maybe first name, last name, and email address. If there's some sort of delivery via a phone, then the phone number, but rarely the phone number. Most always it's first name, email. And hell, if you don't need I will back that up. Actually, I try to get the first name. I was going to say you could probably get away with just the email address, but to be honest, you can. The problem is it's hard to address people. It's hard to personalize your marketing messaging when you don't know the person's first name. So get the person's first name. It's usually not a barrier for people to enter that. The next one is the questions on your form should be clear and obvious. So when we build these forms, we create these forms, a lot of times we think we're being clear. We think we're being obvious. Like, yeah, you just need to enter this information. But from the end user standpoint, a lot of times we don't know exactly what the form is asking. What do you want me to put here? I don't know. And if you have a form that has that unclear question, people won't fill it out. They're like, well, I don't know. I have to think, first of all, it's way too hard to fill out this form. And I don't even know what you're asking me to do or to fill out here. So I don't know. It's not very clear in the wording. So you want to make sure that what you're asking is very clear and very obvious. All right. The next one is all of the required fields should be clearly labeled up front. That way, people know what they need to fill out and what they don't need to fill out. There's nothing worse than getting through a form, thinking you didn't need to fill something out and you did need to fill it out. Or, well, the next one is the formatting, right? So a lot of times required fields have some special formatting. So you fill it out, but yet you didn't fill out the right format. A lot of times in phone numbers and dates, there's a lot of times a certain format they want you to fill it out in, but if you don't specify what that format is and it's required to be in a certain format and it errors out, that's a pain in the butt. So the suggestion, the next one is use formatting and masking when you can. So these are two things that a lot of times I'm going to assume if you're out there making website forms that you're not coding them from scratch with HTML, right? And CSS. I'm going to assume that. I'm going to assume you're using some website or some form builder where it's built in, has the functionality a lot of times of being able to apply what type of field it is. Formatting and masking, meaning if I'm collecting a phone number, I'm specifying that this is a phone number and it should have this format. Or it's an email address and it should have a certain format. It should have an @ sign. It should have a dot something, right? Like it should have those. And if it doesn't, then I know it's not an email address. So formatting. And masking is basically like a phone number. Do you want like parentheses around the first part, the area code? Do you not? Should it have dashes? Should it just be all like a big series of numbers? What's the mask? Like how should it be formatted? That's called masking. And a lot of times these form builders have these options where you can set them in when you're building your form. So use them when you can. The next item is handling longer forms. So sometimes you do have longer forms and you need to have longer forms sometimes. So the tricks that we use with longer forms is to use a thing called paging. So basically, we've all seen this. Basically, it's where you're just asking one or two questions and then you click next. And then you ask a couple more questions, click next. So the beauty of this is it's easy to get started for the user, right? I can just answer some simple questions, click next. It's not this, I don't come to this page with this huge form and I'm like, oh man, I don't want to fill all that out. But if I see just a couple questions, okay. And then if you do that, you need to show like at the top or above it, like some like progress of how many steps there are or a progress bar or something to that effect, showing people how many more questions or where they're at least in filling out this form so they know. So the other cool thing when you start doing the paging is a tip would be to make the first few questions easy to answer. And something people want to answer. So when you go to fill out a form, there's always the questions like, okay, what's your name, your phone number, and your email address? Or maybe it's your mailing address. Like those are not what you come to a form to fill out. A lot of times it's like, what is your budget or how can we help you or what things are you having problems with? Those questions that people are there, the things they want answers to, ask those questions first because they're more inclined to answer those. Then what happens, once they start answering and filling stuff out and clicking next, now they are already in the form and now they feel compelled to complete the form versus just abandoning the form, right? Once they start it, people want to finish it, right? So ask the easy questions first, ask the other like mundane questions, name, phone number, email address at the end. The other way that you can handle long forms is to at least break it up into sections, right? So instead of having all like a bunch of form fields, like you can a lot of times add in like little areas where it'll like have a little like line with a title, like your information or, how we can help you and whatever. Breaking it up into sections. Another tip with longer forms, and a lot of times these form builders will give you this option, is the option to save. So if, let's say, there's going to be some information that a lot of government forms or business forms will have this, where you have to go in and have all of this information ready. Like, and you're like, oh crap, I don't have that. I got to go find it, or, oh, that's at the office, or I got to go get it, or get it from somebody else, and you don't just have it readily available. A lot of times forms will say, before you start this form, you need to make sure that you have this, this, and this, or you can give them an option to save it. Or if it's a form that requires people to do more of like essay questions or fill out like more in-depth like information, they might want to just say, you know what, I need to, think about this a little bit more. If you give them the option to save it, then they can come back to it and start over. Now, we use Gravity Forms with WordPress, and it has that option. I know there are a bazillion other form creators out there, tools, and I'm sure they all pretty much have that save option as well. So utilize that in your longer forms. Okay, the next item that we need to talk about is your submit button. So first off, your submit button should stand out, right? It should definitely have contrast and color and size and everything. You want to make it obvious that people need to click that button to take the next step. So it needs to stand out. The next item is your submit button. The text on your submit button should reiterate the offer or imply action. So, for example, instead of it saying submit, it should say get my free download or schedule a call or something other than submit or learn more or contact us. Even contact us is better than submit. And I'm going to go ahead and say almost 100% of the time, the default text on a form submit button is the word submit. So if you go to a form builder and you create a new form, I almost guarantee you that the text on that button is going to be submit. And they'll give you the ability to change it. So change it to something that is, get my free download or, something to that extent, right? So, okay, let's keep moving on here. The next thing that we need to address when it comes to your forms is what happens after they fill out the form. So what we're talking about here is lead generation. Yes, you've done all the hard work to get them to take the action on the form. The form then needs to have the functionality and the setup for them to easily take the action. But then after they take the action, do they feel left and abandoned? Like, do you redirect them to a thank you page with more information? Yes, that's what you need to do. You want to direct them to a thank you page that has more information, what to expect, a thank you, a acknowledgement that the form got submitted and they have completed what you've asked them to do and what to expect next, and maybe some more information or something. Don't just, the other one is like, we'll be in touch soon. Well, that's great. Like if you can get specific about like how soon and who's going to be in touch and what to expect next. So really think about what happens after the form, because just because they hit that submit button doesn't mean that lead has turned into anything more than just someone who just hit a submit button. So what the action you take after that form is submitted is still part of that process. So think about that. I recommend directing them to a thank you page where you can give them more information, whatever. There's so many different things to do here depending on you and the form and them and everything, but you want to give them something of value, something of, confidence that yes, you got it and they completed the step. The next bit of advice when it comes to your forms on your website is to check them. Now, I don't mean check them every day. I mean, maybe once a month. Go to your website form and fill it out and make sure that it is working. If you're not receiving entries and emails from your forms, double check them, because technology breaks. And a lot of times your form that you think is working just isn't working. There's so many things that can go wrong. It could be the website. It could be the technology. It could be something on the server. It could be your email. Maybe it's going into spam. Like, things just change without you knowing. So if you're just sitting back like 100% confident that you don't even need to think about your forms anymore, well, then you will end up in a situation. Check your forms, because I'll tell you what, it's only a matter of time before something happens. And all of a sudden you're like, hey, yeah, I haven't gotten any form submissions lately. And here you have just missed, 10 to 20 different emails and leads. So check your forms. And that, my friends, is my advice for creating website forms that will convert more leads. Go to your website, implement these ideas, and let's see how many more leads you get. I would love to hear back. And if you have any questions, let me know. I would love to answer them. If you found this valuable, please share this and leave us a review, and we'll see you in the next episode.